to the item 6.2 of the agenda in regard to the CCPR meeting, in regard to the MRLs for milk and milk fat at the 55th session of the regard to this item during the 55th session of the Codex Committee on Pesticide Residues in 2024. The Codex Secretariat informed that CCPR 40 for 2008 had agreed that for fat-soluble pesticides with MRLs established for both milk and milk fat for regulation and monitoring purposes, whole milk should be analyzed and the result compared with MRL for whole milk. Also, it was agreed to ask the joint in regard to the pesticide residues GMPR to insert a note to this effect alongside the MRL for whole milk in all cases. The Codex Secretariat further noted that this decision had never been implemented and the Codex database would need to be updated after all relevant CXLs at CCPR 56 were considered. The CCPR 55 agreed to provide for GMPR to add the footnote agreed in 2008 to all future MRL recommendations for whole milk, were also recommended for milk fats for all pesticides determined in the Codex Secretariat in regard to MRLs and milk fat residues. In regard to the work process for the Codex Secretariat, reviewed all compounds, fat soluble completely and non-fat soluble in the Codex database for MRLs for pesticides, having 6Ls for both milk and milk fat, and the Codex determined the 31st compounds for these pesticides of fat-soluble compounds. Taken into consideration, this work didn't include the MRLs in regard to the results of GMPR meeting in 2024, which are to be considered by CCPR 56 under agenda item 6.1. In this slide, based on the CCP GP 34 work regarding the terminology of amendment, correction, and revision of these terms definition under part 7 of section 2.1 of the procedures for the elaboration of codex and standards and the related texts. This editorial update qualifies as an amendment, not a correction, since it didn't involve fixing an error, and it is not a revision, as it didn't entail an update affecting more than a limited number of provisions. So it reflects an evolution in scientific nomenclature. In regard to the technical analysis of this item, The GMPR recognized potential problems with the approach of setting separate MRLs for whole milk and milk fat. When, for enforcement purpose, the concentration measured in milk fat for milk fat. This issue is for sites with intermediate fat solubility if the milk analyzed when it is physically separated to the dilution wall of whole milk is used to obtain the fat fraction. Pesticide residues from the aqueous phase are also extracted, resulting in animation in milk. Also publicized and analyzation. And assess these results comparison to the MRLs in whole milk, and the CCPR requested the GMPR to include an appropriate footnote to this with the MRL4 proposed, and milk should be analyzed and compare MRLs. Key amendments proposed. Because footnote application that have standards determining the MRLs. They will not be inserted against the. It will remain in the footnote. And this will be added for the pesticides with the solubility in fat. It will apply to fat soluble pesticides, and the note will be in all situations, whether the CXL for milk and milk fat in regard to the milk fat and whole milk. For the recommendations of CCPR56, confirming the decision taken by CCPR40 to insert the following note into the Codex database for milk CXLs in all cases where CXLs are established for fat-soluble pesticides in both milk and milk fat.
In all cases where CX exercise in both milk and milk fat, التي propose والمilk to be milk. المقترح الثاني retire to its request
The second reiterate its request to GMPR to include this note alongside the MRL for whole milk whenever MRLs are established for both and an additional request without addition because it was approved during CCPR in 2008 and approved in CCPR 55. Thank you.